hello everyone. I'm Colonel Jeremy Bell, the Garrison Commander for Fort Campbell, and I'd like to welcome you to another edition of our Facebook Town Halls. In the past, we've done Facebook Town Halls that are live, and we very much focused on giving you updates and providing an opportunity for you to ask questions so we can answer those live in a Facebook forum. This one's a little bit different. We took all of your input over the last 4 to 5 weeks, and there's some questions that we just aren't able to answer in a live forum. They're very specific. They cover areas that we didn't have expertise in or didn't have panel members with expertise in. So tonight we brought together a panel that's going to talk to you about personnel issues, soldier issues, and family issues that we weren't able to get to in previous iterations of this Facebook forum. What I'd like to tell you is what we're going to try to provide for you today is a list of resources and services that you have at your disposal to help you work through some very difficult problems that the COVID crisis has levied upon our force and our families. This is only a starting point. We're not going to be able to deep dive into any one issue. What we want to do is give you a broad spectrum of issues that our soldiers and families are facing and give you some resources and starting points to start your journey and start your research. My focus is really to make sure that you first and foremost truly use your chain of command and leverage your chain of command when you have issues. They are your starting point. They are the ones that can help you guide you through these very difficult times that we're facing. So the folks that I brought onto this panel are the Division G1, Lieutenant Colonel Wharton. She is to my left. And then I have Lieutenant Bredlau, who's from the Legal Assistance Office. We also have Karen Milner, the ACS Director. That's Army Community Service. And then we have Russ Baggerly, our Installation Transportation Office Representative. And what we're going to talk to you about today are some very specific topics. First and foremost, we're going to talk a little bit about PCS and the stop-move policies. Second, we're going to talk about family law and some family concerns that folks might be dealing with. Next, we're going to talk about transitions and ETSs. And then arriving soldiers will be the next. And the last one we'll touch on is some travel restrictions out there and some exceptions to policies on that. So with that, what I'd like to do is start with Karen Milner. And if we can talk, Karen, just a little bit about some of the hardships that our soldiers are going through and what resources are out there to help them through this. Obviously, we're in a stop-move status. Folks are isolated from their support networks, and that puts a stress on the soldier and the family. So if you could just open up with some remarks on that.
Thank you, sir. I think the most important thing I'd like to share is that Army Community Service is still here. We're here to support soldiers and their unique and personal needs. One of the main areas that soldiers are interested in is finances. So the Financial Readiness Program, that team stands ready to assist. Even though you can't come to the building and talk to us face to face, we're there remotely and we'll do the best we can to provide those services to you. We also have the relocation office. While you're planning your time away from the current environment, you can look at resources in the local community. If you've never been here, the Relocation Center offers that support for you. All of our numbers are going to be listed later because everybody's needs are personal, and we want to be here for that, sir. Back to you.
Excellent. Thanks for that. I appreciate your opening remarks and your insights. What I'd like to do is go around the table here and offer the opportunity for first Lieutenant Colonel Wharton to talk a little bit about her role on the panel.
Yes, sir. So I'm sure most of you are wondering kind of what a Division G1 does. So basically, I manage all the human resources for all the service members on Fort Campbell. So me, along with my partners at the Fort Campbell Soldier Support Center and Finance Office, we're here to support all the questions and answers that we can possibly provide in regards to PCS moves, stop moves, ETS, retirements, entitlements, and any exceptions of policy that we can do to kind of lessen the burden that the COVID hardship has been placed on families.
Well, thanks for that. I appreciate that. Hardest working person in the division, I'm sure. So over to you, LT. Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Before I go any further, I just want to say that any information I'm giving tonight is information. So if you need a legal opinion or legal advice, please contact the Legal Assistance Office and an attorney will be assigned to you. Legal Assistance Office, even though our doors are not open, we are still taking clients. We are still helping soldiers, as well as Trial Defense Services. TDS is still open. And of course, our staff judge advocates and admin and criminal law are helping make sure that the mission is still going forward.
Appreciate that. Of course, you can't have a lawyer on a panel without a disclaimer, so appreciate that as well. So the first topic we're going to talk about is PCSing. And one of the impacts of the COVID crisis was the stop move for the Army. And that's put a lot of people in difficult circumstances. So what I'd like to talk about first is what can people do in this situation, and what is the Army doing to help alleviate some of that stress?
Absolutely, yes, sir. I think the most important thing is to let them know that they are not alone. There are over 400 people on the installation right now that are in that same kind of predicament, being forced into this position for stop move, and potentially hundreds more if anything gets extended due to the COVID pandemic. So the Army has instituted 4 entitlements. The 2 that really affect the PCS soldiers are per diem, which is done by location. So if you're stuck either at Fort Campbell or at another location outside of Fort Campbell, you're potentially authorized a per diem allocation that will be paid when you get to your gating installation, and also a family separation allowance. And this is really specific to soldiers who are proceeding to OCONUS locations or locations their family can't quite get there because of the pandemic. Really, there's also exceptions to policy that can be processed. So right now, the Vice Chief of Staff of the Army at Department of the Army is the approval authority for all exceptions to policy for PCS, but we are getting them done. So far, across the installation, we've had 3 so far approved, and a lot of them are due to many different reasons, but the majority of what we're seeing right now are sort of financial hardship. So if you've purchased a house at your gating installation and it's going to be a hardship for you and your family to kind of absorb the cost of your living conditions here, and also the mortgage on your home, and also EFMP family members and things like that, where they really need to get medical care established at their gating installation, and kind of being in limbo status really doesn't work for their medical care. Those are really the big ones that we're seeing. So the big thing to understand for soldiers, family members, and commanders really is that every situation is absolutely different. And we ask that you treat everyone as an individual, understand what their situation is, and what exact situations you can do to help.
All right, so a couple follow-up questions for you. So going to the Secretary of the Army for a waiver on something, an exception to policy, seems like a pretty arduous task. But what's the timeline to get something like that approved?
So I believe our first one, it took about 7 total days from the day it arrived to the G1 office. And so I believe that the chain of commands at all levels understand the importance of these exceptions, and they're absolutely getting pushed through as quickly as possible.
Great. And then for the chain of command, kind of best practices out there, what are the best packets, and what has the best chance of success?
So I think really the more information that you can provide, the better, right? So we need to understand, you can't just say that there's a financial hardship. We have to understand kind of what that financial hardship is. So the more detail you can provide, and also it helps too to have sort of mitigating circumstances. So like the soldier understands that they're potentially going to have to go into a quarantine status or something like that, and making sure that you're factoring all that stuff into the process, so that when it gets to a commander, they don't really have any questions to ask because you've answered all those questions in your request. So some commanders are doing it really well. They're providing memorandums for record with all the detail that a commander could possibly want to when he's in that decision-making process.
Excellent. That's great. Let's get a legal perspective on that.
Sure. Ma'am, I think you touched on a big issue right now with having purchased another home or rental contracts, getting out of those. The big thing right now we want to reiterate to everyone is do not end your contracts. If you're expecting a PCS in June or July even, and you already put in your notice, if you've already put in that notice, we recommend you contacting our office and we can help assist you in some sort of way of either extending that with your rental company or if you need some sort of other solution. But right now we're not recommending you terminate any rental contracts. If you have a home for sale, you might want to not necessarily take it off the market, but there may be other options you may want to look into at this point. The other thing with that is there's services still available. So if you are in that position where you have already terminated your rental agreement, you don't have anywhere to go, we do have resources we can direct you to. The Housing Services Office is still open. Again, their doors are not open, but they have a phone and an email that you can contact that have great relationships with our community, with the rental agencies that can maybe find you a short-term solution, as well as we have agreements with local hotels who are willing to take discounted rates for our soldiers so that nobody is left in a position where they don't have a home to call their own right now.
Absolutely. And you bring up the HSO, the Housing Services Office, a tremendous resource for our soldiers and their families. Folks always think of them as the resource to go to when you're in processing, but they can help you out no matter if you live on post, if you live off post. They can help with specific issues you may have. They have a lot of great relationships with the outside community and can usually figure out ways to settle issues before they become true problems. I'll also highlight that IHG has just come on board and said their daily rate is basically tied to BAH. So for somebody that's in a situation where they're held over and they don't have a place to stay, and BAH is one of those issues, and if you go to a regular hotel, it might be a higher rate. IHG is an option. So Russ, you've got some interesting perspectives on this as well, so I'm going to throw it over to you to get a transportation perspective. Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Listen, the first thing that the transportation community wants to say to the soldier is, please don't try to go around the stop move. The risk to you, number one, the risk to you is you may not get reimbursed. But secondly, even if you're doing like a personally procured move, what people call a DIDI move or a PPM, because you've chosen to do that doesn't mean you can go ahead and take off and move. It's not a special category. And stop move still applies to that. What you can do, and what we recommend people do right now, if you're in the PCS window, try to preload all the information you possibly can, log in to move.mil, and get your information in there. But then keep in mind, when moves get turned back on, these delayed moves are going to be starting presumably right about the same time as peak season. There's going to be extremely high density of PCS and move requests. And while the personal property shipping office is still open for appointment based only, and we're still doing counseling on an appointment based only, it's a limited audience, and it's a slower process. So we need everybody to be planning, thinking ahead, using that move.mil. If you are, let's talk about the Patriot Express. If you were to go to Korea during this, remember that if you go commercial to Korea, you're going to get quarantined for 2 weeks. The only approved way for soldiers to PCS to Korea right now is via the Patriot Express. Patriot Express spaces are extremely limited. Pet spaces on there are limited. Family spaces on there are limited. To get coordination for if you're going to Korea, PCS, you need to reach out to our personal property shipping office. We also have a passenger travel representative in there that can work with the scheduled airline ticket office, SATO, to help you out with that process. Now, for people who, if movers have picked up your household goods, you need to understand something. The TSPs, the transportation service providers, are not just going to dump your goods. They're not going to get rid of your stuff. They're not going to auction it off. They're going to get paid eventually when moves start up again. Your stuff will be placed in either in-transit storage, non-temp storage, or storage in transit. And both of those are no cost to the soldiers. So we're taking care of business. It's just delayed. There's one other situation I wanted to mention. We had a soldier who actually shipped household goods to Germany. And so the household goods are gone. They're sitting in Germany. They're in either non-temp storage or storage in transit, but they'll be there waiting when the soldier catches up to have that stuff delivered out. And again, at no cost to soldiers. Back to you, sir.
Great. Hey, thanks for that perspective. I think when you talk about mindset for a soldier in that weird situation where it's a PCS and we're at a stop move, really getting into the mindset that be as proactive as possible, lean as far forward as possible on the paperwork side, but don't get to the point where you're obligating the government money that you may actually have to reimburse later on. So great perspective there, thanks. Our next topic is family law, and this is one where we're putting families in a difficult situation, and this is countrywide and worldwide. Everybody's in a stressful circumstance. You're not as tied in with your local support network as you once were. We've isolated you. You can't move. You can't go to other parts of the country. You can't bring your support network to you. And this creates a lot of stress on the families. And it's hard to reason your way out of some of these situations. What I will ask, for our audience is, if you're having family troubles, we did a whole Facebook town hall taping yesterday on resiliency and how some kind of helpful hints on how families can get through this stressful time. I absolutely encourage you to view those or view that post. But on the family law side, if you can provide some insights, I'd appreciate that.
Yes, sir. So when those stressors are there, or maybe you have prior relationships or a complicated family dynamic, and you're dealing with either child custody orders or family divorces, support orders, things of that nature, our office, we do not draft things for the court, so we don't represent soldiers in civilian court, but we will certainly look at orders. We will look at things that are given to the service member or the families, and then help them in that process. So on our Facebook page, we've actually uploaded a lot of the documents that we have in our internal office that the service members and the spouses or family members can access off of that Facebook page. If you are looking to get a divorce in Tennessee or Kentucky,
not advocating.
I am not advocating, correct. But if you are in the process of doing that, those papers, information papers, are on our Facebook page. It has the links to both the Tennessee and the Kentucky courts where you can download all of the information. You can then make an appointment with our office where we can walk you through that process. Normally we would do that in person, walking you through page by page, but with the environment we're in right now, we cannot do that. We can walk you over the phone. We can email back and forth. Those are a lot of options we have been using. People do need to be aware, though, Tennessee and Kentucky courthouses do have limited hours and availability, so you might not be able to get that divorce done in the 60 days that typically you would be able to do. Another thing that's on a lot of people's minds is their summer visitations with their children. That's going to be affected by travel restrictions and things beyond what we even know in our Fort Campbell community. What we ask is if you have a question about your child visitation or you cannot then go get your children, bring your orders to us at the Client Services Office. You can, on our Facebook page, there's a link. You can email us straight from the Facebook page. It goes straight to that email address where we are constantly checking it. We check it weekends. All the legal assistance attorneys are constantly in there trying to get you information as quickly as possible. So if you have a question about that child visitation, give us the paperwork, or if you don't have the paperwork, we can talk through how to get you the paperwork, and we can give you the best options moving forward. Everything is case by case, so every family is different, every situation is different, but we are still open and we're still available for assistance.
Are you doing notary actions at this point?
So we have a very limited notary service. It's mostly for either if you're a deploying soldier or if you are an essential employee who is needing something urgently. All brigades have their legal offices which have their notaries available as well. So they are still in business as well. We've been encouraging service members to reach out to their legal team if they need a POA or something notarized that is still available to them.
Great. That's a great point. We still have a chain of command out there, and I always encourage the chain of command in stressful times, really dig deep and really try to understand what problems your soldiers are dealing with, and then drive to get them the resources and help that they need. Did you have anything to add on?
Yeah,
that
absolutely. So just so you're tracking, there is a hardship leave exception to policy to go outside of the 50-mile radius. It's approved by the 18th Airborne Corps Commander, and we have seen some come back approved for child custody and kind of family law type issues. So it is something that can be pursued in hardship if you're struggling.
Awesome. Thanks. Our third topic is about separations from the Army. And that's our ETSs, our retirements, and our MEB process. And this is one where folks think that just because we're in a COVID crisis that everything has come to a halt, but like you bring up, business still occurs in the Army. And separations, ETSs, retirements are still ongoing. They've just changed and morphed, and there's some policies out there that are helpful, and we'll talk about that in a moment. So what guidance can we offer our audience on how they can go through this process?
So, sir, I think really all the ETSs and retirements will stay on schedule if that's what the service member wants to do. So if their ETS date is coming and they want to get out of the service, then absolutely that we will support them in any way that we can. I know SFL TAP is still offering some services online, and most of that stuff can be done so they can still kind of make an easier transition out of service. But they can also stay if they want to. So if they meet the Army requirements and they are still willing to serve in the Army, HRC can process, so the Army Human Resources Command can process any extensions for retirement and any unqualified resignations that officers have submitted. And 06 level commanders can approve ETS extensions for soldiers. Also, the Army is still going to need people after this. So if they are offering short-term re-enlistments for soldiers who meet the standard and absolutely want to continue to serve the nation. We are having some issues, I believe, with service members saying that it's a little bit more difficult for them to make the transition on the installation due to some restrictions that are being imposed due to COVID for their out-processing appointments. So all of those facilities are still open. So if you're having issues, we just recommend that you get with your chain of command, and we can absolutely reach out to the Soldier Support Center at any office that you're having trouble with to make sure that you're able to meet the gates on time for yourself.
Absolutely. And I control a lot of those agencies, so they can certainly get a hold of the garrison, and we'll help them out as well. Russ, you had some interesting perspectives on this, so can you weigh in on this topic?
Yes, sir, absolutely. As was mentioned, ETS separations, retirements, that's not been stopped by the stop move order. Neither is household goods movements for ETSs and separations and retirements. Soldiers can go ahead and make an appointment to have their household goods delivered out either to home of record or home of selection. But soldiers need to keep in mind that if you choose home of selection and it's further than your home of record, the Army is only going to reimburse you up to the distance or the cost for the move of your household goods to home of record. So keep that in mind, but you can still make an appointment. You can still come to household goods and get your final briefing. That must be done in person. But separation and retirement moves are still ongoing, and you see the telephone number and the mailbox address for the personal property shipping office displayed on the banner. Back to you, sir.
Thanks. So moving from those leaving the Army, so at the end of their military service, to those coming into the Army, that's a whole new set of challenges. And we have 242 or 241 AIT soldiers coming off of this installation this week. And these are folks that have no experience in the Army, so everything is new to them. Can you talk a little bit about what they can expect when they get here from a personnel standpoint?
Absolutely, yes, sir. So really we're starting to in-process pretty large groups starting this week. It's a really great story for the 101st as we're starting to get a lot more soldiers than we were anticipating due to some COVID restrictions, OCONUS. So it's a really good news story for the readiness and the formations in the division. So I know a lot of the family members, they're really worried about their soldiers and when they're going to arrive. They've probably been separated them from a long period of time, but we want to kind of put their mind at ease, make sure that they understand that those soldiers are going to absolutely be taken care of upon their arrival to Fort Campbell. They'll be in process. They'll be given a place to live, taken care of. They'll be brought into a sponsor from their chain of command, likely a team leader or someone at that level, to kind of bring them in, help them understand kind of what's going to happen and make sure they get in processed and get all the entitlements that they'll have, be able to potentially get housing if they have dependents coming, but we're asking for a delay a little bit with the family members to make sure the soldiers get established, get into a routine, and then potentially have a place to have the families be received here when they arrive to Fort Campbell.
If I can add just on that point, so the idea here is for soldiers coming onto onto Fort Campbell and being assigned to the 101st. The idea is to live in a barracks for the time being. We're in unprecedented times, and what we ask is that families stay in place and that each individual soldier works with their chain of command for the right time to bring their families here. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. And really the only other thing is we just make sure that when they arrive, they're really reading their orders so that we make sure that all the entitlements that they're authorized, to make sure their dependents are on there. A lot of times service members will get married en route. And so a lot of things that they think they might be entitled to, they might not be entitled to. So just basically understanding what it says on those orders and what that means. And if you had a change in status since going to AIT, maybe you got married while you're at AIT, maybe you had a child while you were at AIT, making sure that we're taking care of all of those things upon your arrival.
Great, and there are experts that help you along the way. You don't have to be an expert on any one thing coming into the Army. We will walk you through this process. It's a very deliberate process, and it's step by step. And you will have the opportunity to talk to people and talk your way through all of these issues as you go through in processing. So great, I appreciate that. Before we get into exceptions to policy, what I'd like to do is throw it over to ACS to talk a little bit about, since we're talking about the challenges of COVID and what those things are out there that really put our soldiers in a difficult position, the families when they get here. ACS has a lot of tools that they can help with, and what I often tell people that are coming onto the installation for the first time and that are in processing is, when you have no clue who to go to when there's a problem, start with ACS. That is an organization that has their tentacles into everything, and if they can't specifically help you out, they know who's out there that can help you. So, Karen, if you can, just talk a little bit about that for our new soldiers.
As many of the experts on the panel today talked, Army Community Service is a partner with them. So I mentioned already relocation readiness. We talked about the Installation Transportation Office. We partner with them to provide comprehensive support when a soldier's relocating, and we help them navigate their way through the community. The lending closet is also available should you plan on bringing your family and need short-term assistance or household items before your household goods get here. The financial readiness program, sir, I mentioned before. There was a mention earlier about hardships. The financial readiness program will help families build a budget, and we're doing all of those items and actions remotely. And we also have the Army Emergency Relief, where we can do those and process actions without being face-to-face. One of the main important things that soldiers can remember is that they always have the information and referral office to call. That number is listed on the resource page that's added later on the Facebook page. But if they call that and don't get an answer, they will be able to leave a message and they will get an answer back. When soldiers plan on bringing their families, they have a lot of other resources as well. The Mobilization and Deployment Program offers support for the Army family team building. It helps new soldiers and new families understand the Army. It can be a complex, challenging new world for them to come to, and that's what Army Community Service provides with the Army family team building. We also, as they bring families later on, the Exceptional Family Member Program is here when they have families with special needs, and the Family Advocacy Program can offer support with their new parent support program for families that have children 0 to 3. And then we have a prevention program that helps parents build relationships. So please reach out to these resources. They're here for you now to help you plan for those opportunities that are going to come up as you relocate to Fort Campbell. Back to you, sir.
Thanks, Karen. I appreciate that. Certainly ACS is plugged into a lot of different things and can help, so absolutely encourage our audience to reach out if they need something. Our last topic is going to be on limits on travel. And there's obviously unique circumstances out there, and there are circumstances that require people to travel. So can you talk a little bit about what you've seen so far, what some of those exceptions are for our audience?
Yes, sir. So the two most routine exceptions of policy that we're processing right now at the division are the exceptions of policy for emergency leave and the exceptions of policy for return of TDY. So we had a lot of service members who went out on temporary duty for professional military education, other reasons, and they were kind of stuck at installations. There's now policy in place to make sure that they are brought home in a timely manner, and those are approved, on a daily basis by the senior commander. Also, I don't think there's been a day that's gone by in the last couple of weeks where we haven't gotten emergency leave approved. Obviously there's a pretty high threshold that has to be met to be deemed emergency leave. It has to be an immediate family member, has to be a pretty serious injury or death of an immediate family member. But they're absolutely getting approved. They're absolutely getting approved every single day at a very rapid rate. I believe just today alone we had 2 service members get approved emergency leave almost immediately after arriving to my office for processing, one for the death of a mother and one for a pretty serious injury for a mother. So they're absolutely getting done every single day. And then we talked a little bit about the hardship leave, ETP. So a little bit of a longer process because it has to go to 18th Airborne Corps for approval, but we have seen them come back for child custody issues. We've had some ill family members that didn't necessarily meet the threshold for emergency leave, but did meet the threshold for a hardship leave. So they're absolutely getting approved, and we absolutely have the chain of command's ear for any of these situations. I think really the most important thing for you to do is make sure your chain of command understands the situation. We ask for a Red Cross message, but really it's just understanding that there's a pretty serious situation that has to be dealt with, and that's the reason why you're asking to go outside of the 50-mile radius.
And similar to my previous question, any advice to the chain of command on when they're putting these types of packets together?
So I think direct linked into the chain of command. So the faster we know about it, the faster we can get it approved. And again, just kind of asking the questions of the service member prior to them coming to us for approval. So a lot of times it's a stepmother, a stepfather, or maybe a grandmother that meets a local parentis type role, and understanding all of that before it comes to us, so we don't have to ask you the questions is really the most important thing. So get to the root of the story prior to bringing the exception up for approval.
Yeah, that's spot on, because usually these are emergencies, right? So there's a time, so any delays are a bad thing. So the more you can paint the full picture again, the better off you're going to be, because if there are no questions, there are no delays.
Right.
Yeah. Great. Well, that ends our discussion, and I do appreciate everyone's participation. You guys were absolute experts. It's like you've done this before, so great job. Just to close out, what I will say is we talked a lot about resources. We've talked a lot about what tools are out there for soldiers and families to deal with the intricacies and the problems that we have that manifest themselves during a COVID crisis. But these resources, these tools out there to help you are not just during the COVID crisis. Everything we've talked about, besides some very specific policy, Army level policy, are year-round resources and that our soldiers and our families can tap into. I think what we provided today was really just a baseline. It is your starting point. It is we're giving you the general construct of what's out there and what challenges that we are facing as an Army, as soldiers in the Army. But there's some personal ownership here to make sure that, 1, stay tied in with the chain of command. 2, that you do all the research you can to make the best possible decisions you can make for yourself and your families. We will post all the resources that we have and that we've mentioned in this program online after we post this video. The last thing I'll say is don't suffer in silence. We are at a time where we're very isolated as individuals and as families, and there's a tendency just to hole up and turtle up. And what I will say is, don't suffer in silence. You have problems, other people have problems. Your first resource is always your chain of command. They are there to make sure that they fully understand the problem and then help guide you and direct you in the right direction to help solve your problems. But as you can tell in this program, there are a lot of other resources out there. I hope that you can tap into them. I hope you use them. They are there for you. So with that, thanks for tuning in, and we appreciate everything that you do for this country and this installation every day. Thank you.